The Saints had a busy final day of mandatory minicamp, and the biggest news from it, Alvin Kamara leaving practice early because of a contract dispute. What does this mean for 41's future with the Saints? Will he be here for the long haul? Is this his final year in New Orleans? Let's talk about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Huda Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosevoglu, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Fickner Injury Lawyers and by Crystal. So the final day of minicamp is in the books for the Saints, and it was an eventful one. You'd think that you'd be talking about certain rookies playing well, Kool-Aid McKinstry being on the practice field and getting individual work in, or Dallin Holker, kind of emerging in a tight end room that needs help, especially with Juwan Johnson injured and out for the foreseeable future. But the biggest story is without a doubt Alvin Kamara and what's going on with AK. So it comes out today that he was not at practice, left early because of a contract dispute. And it's a tricky situation for Alvin because he does technically have another year after this on his contract, but it's a balloon year. He's not going to see that $25 million there. So essentially, this is the last year of AK's contract with the Saints. And for New Orleans, obviously, you know what he's done for this team, and you know that deep down he could still be a productive player, but this is not a situation where you can just hand out a contract because of what a guy's done and because of loyalty. I think that's where teams make mistakes. So let's get through it. What do the Saints need to do to make sure this is right? For me, I think there's a balance. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Saints should just let Alvin walk no matter what the price is. But I think we have to, as fans, have a very nuanced and fair conversation about what Alvin is worth today as opposed to what Alvin was worth yesterday. And I still think Alvin's a really good player. And I would go as far to say what makes this situation so weird is that I don't think it's as simple as saying, let's look at the production and get paid off production, because Pete Carmichael's offense held Alvin back the last couple of years. So it's tough to just go strictly off production. But what I can go off, something that's been a big factor for running backs, probably since all the way to the start of football until the end of time, is age. Alvin's going to be 29 this July. And it doesn't mean just because he's 29 that he's completely going to fall off a cliff and that's how it goes. But you are now towards the back half of your career as a running back. And you don't want to be the team that made too heavy of a commitment to a guy who might lose his wheels at some point. You don't want to do that because that could really burden the team. We've seen it before. I mean, look at the Cowboys when they were paying Zeke. That was a rough spot for them. You don't want that as a franchise. So he turns 29 in July. Right now, his average salary is second highest in the league at $15 million. The only guy higher than him is Christian McCaffrey, who, look, years ago, we would have had the most fun debate about CMC or Alvin. It's not a debate anymore. Right now, CMC is such a better player than Alvin. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. He's the offensive player of the year. It's not a disrespectful thing to Alvin. But 19 million, 15 million. One is not coming off offensive player of the year and having arguably an MVP season. The other is. That's important. Now, let's keep it with age. After Alvin, in terms of average salary, Jonathan Taylor is third at 14 million, and then Saquon Barkley at 12.5 million. Both running backs are younger than Alvin. So if we're going to go off his age, again, he's going to be 29 in July. You have to go all the way to Derrick Henry's salary at $8 million a year to find a running back older than Alvin who still gets paid a decent amount of change. So $8 million is Derrick Henry's. Aaron Jones, also slightly older than Alvin, $7 million. So if I'm being quite honest, guys, and I know people are going to say, oh, that's ridiculous, that's too cheap. Alvin's market to me is in that $8 to $10 million range right now. And anything over it would probably be an overpay. And I love Alvin. He is one of my favorite Saints of all time. I firmly can say that. Even though he's not done playing for New Orleans yet, I can firmly say he is one of my favorite players I've ever seen suit up for the black and gold. But that doesn't warrant another massive contract. There's still a price. I am not saying just let him walk. But if the Saints give him, 3-year 24, and that's not good enough, I might just say, I don't need to get a deal done. Because we've already seen with Cam Jordan, when you do loyalty deals, sometimes it doesn't work out, and you wonder, man, did I let my emotions get the best of me there? And Alvin can still be a good player. And I think Alvin has a chance here where in Clint Kubiak's offense, he could do some damage. But man, it is a slippery, slippery slope. And from Alvin's perspective, I understand why he's doing this. Like I said, you are going to be 29. You're on the final year of your contract. You want one more nice payday before you go bust your ass for 3-4 more years. And then that's probably the end of your career because you play such a physical position. So logistically, makes all the sense in the world from him and his camp. From the Saints, though, it's rough. And even if Alvin plays really well this year, but let's say doesn't get a contract from the Saints, it might be tough for him next year because he's another year older looking for money. And that is tough, not just for the Saints, for any team in the league to kind of warrant it. So this is going to be a fascinating situation for him. Age is unquestionably a factor. If you don't think so, I think, frankly, you're being a little naive about this. But we'll see what happens. I think there is a price, but I would not let loyalty and good times get in the way of properly negotiating a deal for Alvin. And it's funny because I saw, a tweet today, and this is no shade towards the account. I think they put up some really good stuff, but they were talking about how, like, I would keep Alvin no matter the price. And the clip was his awesome touchdown against the Packers during the COVID season. But in my head, it's like, man, that was 4 freaking years ago. Like, I still think Alvin's a good player. I do not think his production equals his talent. I think right now, his production's been hampered by the offensive system. And now he's got the offensive system for his production and his talent to kind of meet in the middle instead of being so far apart. But you cannot just give this man a massive contract off of hoping that he's still got some prime years left. That's what stupid teams do. I don't want the Saints to fall in that category. CMC earned his $19 million. And even then, he earned $19 million on a 2-year extension for those 19. I would be very careful. Like I said, if you can do 2-year 18, I'm cool with it. It's a little risky, but 2-year 18, all right, let's do it. 2-year 16 would be even better. But I would not go crazy when it comes to Alvin. But again, I'm very fascinated to see how this goes down. And from the Saints' perspective, they are clearly in the money-moving business because they decided to restructure Taysom Hill's contract today. And Taysom Hill's contract restructures save a little over $6 million. And right now, they have over $12 million. And there's 2 thoughts that come to my mind with that move. One, what is the next move? Because that feels like a precursor to something else. It's got to be. You don't just randomly restructure his contract. And 2, Taysom Hill is supposed to have a big role in Clint Kubiak's offense. Clint Kubiak has said nothing but great things about Taysom Hill, both as a football player and just a leader. There is a chance here in this crazy world where Taysom Hill does really well in this new role that he has and maybe extends his career and maybe extends it in New Orleans a little bit longer. So those are my 2 thoughts. The Saints clearly feel good enough about Taysom to tweak that contract, but you don't tweak that contract unless you got a follow-up move. Is that signing a veteran, free agent? I don't know, maybe someone like a Justin Simmons. Is that extending one of your own guys? And that's going to tweak the cap space situation a little bit. Who knows? I mean, Adebo's got to get paid soon. We'll see what happens. So I think this is the move leading up to the move. And that's what I'm wondering what this leads about. But again, it also, to me, is a testament to Taysom and how the Saints are confident about, hey, we can move his contract because he might be here a while and we could tweak it any way we need to. So those are my 2 thoughts for that. Now, before I wrap this all up, I'm going to finish this with somewhat good news because Alvin's situation is not ideal. Taysom's situation is mysterious, if anything, but not bad. And then Chase Young. What's the latest on Chase Young? So he had a follow-up this week with Dr. Robert Watkins on his neck. And according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, he got a positive report from that, which is obviously great for the Saints. But there's still no timetable yet for his return. He's got 6 weeks, I believe, of more tests, or he'll undergo more tests in 6 weeks, and hopes to be participating in training camp, but it's not a guarantee yet. So this is a good sign for the Saints, but I would still caution people, you're better on being the cautiously optimistic than the full-blown delusional optimist, which I would love to be at this moment because I think Chase Young can make a big difference for this Saints team, but we got to hold our ground. We got to see what happens with him, and we'll go from there. But Chase Young gets some positive news, and that's good for the Saints because, man, we know this defensive line needs all the help and talent that they could get, and Chase would definitely bring that in bunches for this team. So it was a busy day 3 of mandatory minicamp. Alvin holding out for a new contract. We'll see where that goes. Taysom gets restructured. You have Chase Young getting positive news. And then you got some rookies in the mix. Fuaga doing his thing. Kool-Aid McKinstry getting some light work in. Dallin Holker hoping to make an impact at tight end. Lots going on for the Saints. We're going to continue to cover it here at Boo Crew Media and on the Straight Up Saints podcast. Make sure you guys, as always, subscribe to the channel, like it. It definitely helps out our video and also the channel in general. And also leave me your thoughts at the bottom here in the comment section. I'll get to. Let me know your thoughts on Alvin. Do you want him signed to a longer contract? If so, what is your price point in your mind? What's too rich? What's too cheap? Put it in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Until then, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for